Hey guys, a couple of people have asked me now how I do coils. So this is going to be the first tutorial I do, so be nice. Um, Today we're going to cover the alien coil. It's a coil that a lot of people struggle with, including me. I used to struggle with them until I found this way of doing it. This way of doing it is a lot easier. Now I'll show you a few tips, I'll show you a few tricks, show you what you need and what I'll be using today. Some of the things I have you won't need to do your coil, but they're handy and I'll show you little tips and tricks on the way. So, without further ado, what we're going to do is we're going to show you what I use, what you're going to need for this tutorial. In terms of gauge of wire, you can obviously alter the gauge of wire. You don't have to use what I'm using today, but to start with, you might want to go bigger. So today, for example, I'm going to be using 26 gauge nichrome 80 and 35 gauge nichrome 80. Both from crazy wire. You can change, obviously, your gauges of wire. So this method I've tried does actually work with 40 gauge. I haven't tried anything lower than 40 gauge. And it works right the way up to 24 gauge with 32 gauge wraps. So that's good, good. So I'm going to show you what I have on the table ready to go and we'll pick it up. So what we're going to need for today's tutorial, we're going to need a swivel setup to start with. Swivels that you're going to need are ball bearing swivels. If you're using anything but ball bearing, it's not going to cope with the RPM of the drill, so it's going to be no good. Plus with swivels they take an absolute tuning, especially the ball bearings ones, because obviously you're going to be using tension and you're going to be using the rotation of the swivel. So we're going to need two sets of toothless pliers. If you haven't got toothless pliers, you can use toothed, but when you clamp in the wire, please be careful. I'm using Dectron. I picked them up from my local watch shop. They were 75 pence a set. We've got wire clippers, heavy duty wire clippers. Picked that up from Amazon for, I think it was like £2. It's like a coil jig, but it's not. Like the normal coil jigs are the ones that you obviously put the wire in and then you turn it and it makes your coil. Obviously that's not going to work with alien coils. Plus it's better to do alien coils by hand, or wrap by hand, purely because you can change your wrap and alter it as you're going along. So if the wrap starts overlapping, you can go back, pull it up and pull down. We're going to need a swivel setup. I've got this from my local watch shop. That was £3.50. Got a swivel setup, two swivels in succession, ball bearing swivels. And also during this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make claptons without any hands. What's that you say? Magic, yes. Spool tamer, small C clamp. Once again, picked up in my local watch shop. They are all available on eBay and Amazon, I've seen, so jobs are good. And think I've covered everything. Yeah. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go into the performance of the alien. I have an alien in here at the moment. I'm going to go into the performance of it. I'll show you how it vapes, and then we're going to dive down and start making our coil. Performance. I'm using parallel box mod. It's called the Castigo. I'm using my Goon RDA as well. So here we have a 5 wrap alien. It's got 3 26 gauge cores wrapped with 35 gauge, 3mm in diameter. It's coming out at around 0.15 or 1.4, I can't remember exactly what it was, but this is the performance of it. Flavour wise, brilliant. I can't fault the flavour. Flavour's on par with the Fused Clapton. Vapour production wise, It's slightly better than the first Clapton because obviously it's got 3 cores, so it's a hotter vape, so the heat transfer is a lot better. But to get this coil to work, you have to perfect a good wicking technique. I use cotton bacon. A lot of people use native, so on and so forth, normal Muji. For my coils, so all I use is cotton bacon. I find it's best for high temperature resistance, and that's what you're going to need, because otherwise you'll just burn through cotton. So, here we go. I'm vaping on UK Labs green DNA, which is the best key lime cheesecake I've ever tried. Picked it up in Vape Expo. Don't know what the retail price is for them. It's also worth to mention this is rather dead battery. Been vaping on it since I got up this morning. So let's start making our helium. First off, we're going to start with Claptons. So here we go. For your Clapton coil, you're going to need to start with your 26 gauge. What I do is I don't put it in the drill straightening out first, because the swivel with the tension, it does help a lot with keeping the wire straight, but please bear in mind you do need it straight. You can't just pull it off the spool and have it in a mess, otherwise when you pull in your Clapton to decore it, it's not going to go right. So I've pulled it off, and I've got a length of 26 gauge. The 26 gauge is roughly, couldn't tell you how long it is. I used my table as like a measuring guide. So get your one end of your Clapton, or your core of your Clapton rather. Stick it through your swivel, the fish eye of your swivel. I grab my toothless tweezers, pliers, and I'll turn my 26 gauge until it's created like a twisted 26 gauge. Clip the excess. So now that's attached to my swivel, that's not going anywhere. It's always important to try and keep this wire as neat as you can, because we're going to need it later again as well. So keep that wire as neat as you can, measure it up, and I've got my drill. With this we are going to be doing no hands Claptons. Yeah. So I'll take it down to the end, clip off what I'm not going to be using, measure it up. Now the no hands Claptons. Here is my 35 gauge that I'm going to be using today. I thread my 35 gauge through the eye of my spool tamer. Keep that on there, and just put my spool tamer around my thing, around my spool, and that's now attached. It's not going to unravel, and it's going to stay put. So now what we do is at the bottom of your 26 gauge, can't really see it, there's nothing on there at the moment, you're going to wrap your 35 gauge around the end of your 26 gauge core, because that's the end that's going in the chuck. Clip the excess. If there's a little bit, always clip it. Try and keep it as neat as you can. So now looks like that. Can't really fucking see it, which is a bit of a nightmare. But yeah, that's how I keep it on. Other people use different ways. Smash it in your chuck. Get it nice and tight. Position it. Now that's got a good tension, can't fault it. So here comes the Clapton part now. So I'm going to start my Clapton. Watch this. So now I've got my Clapton set up. So I'm going to pull a little bit of excess off here. It's important to mention at this point, with your alien, your decore, so if you're clapped it in this way, you want to put your drill in reverse, so you're alien in this way instead of that way. So you always put your alien in reverse to what your Clapton was. Start off. So I got my Clapton now to the point where my spool tamer is sitting on my spool. It's not going anywhere. So I'll just do a couple of wraps with my spool tamer attached, and what it'll do is it will adjust itself to your Clapton. There we go. I'll get my clamp now. Put my clamp on my drill. Just start it. No hands clapped in. Perfect. So just leave that to its thing for a minute now. Now, if you want to, you can pick up the tension so it's not dipping. Doesn't really matter though. Doesn't. So now I'm at the end of my Clapton. So with this point, pull your spool down, and you want an excess here. Clip so you have a good bit of 35 gauge left in itself. Now this is the important part. When decoring, you can gauge whether or not the Clapton will come off your core by moving it up and down the actual core. If your Clapton moves, you're alright, but what I like to do is I like to put my drill in the opposite, and I'll give it a good couple of turns back the other way. That way now, that Clapton is nice and loose on the drill, and it's nice and loose on your core, so it comes off the core quite easy. Cut the part in your drill. So you got that. Now you got a smooth Clapton. Decoring is as simple as finger on the top, finger on the bottom, so you're not stretching your Clapton as you pull in. Just pull it off your core. Keep your core attached to your swivel because you're going to need it for the alien. There we go. Decode Clapton, and that's the excess I was on about. So that's just straight to 35 gauge, and there's your decore. You've got about, I'd say, just over a foot of decord. So when I stretch that, it's going to be anywhere from 6 to 10 foot, I would say. So I'm going to stretch this now, and what I'll try and do is I'll try and take a macro shot of it next to a ruler, so you know roughly how far the ridges are apart. Now, don't fix yourself on what I do with your space in between your decore. It will differ for every person. So if you can't get it like I do, don't worry, because every person's specifications are different, And with aliens, it's all about altering as you're going along, altering tension, angle when you're wrapping. So I'm going to I'm going to stretch this decore out now with the stretch and my clamp. It's quite handy. I'll pick up the side with my excess 35 gauge. I put it through one of the loops on my swivel setup. If you've got a vise, if you've got anything like that, you can use that, of course. And like setting up your core to your fishing swivel, wrap it around itself a couple of times so it's like a twisted. And then that secures it. So when you're pulling on it, you're not going to let that go. It's not going to pop off. That is all just decore clapped on, that is. Wonky wonky. So I'm going to stretch this out now, and then I'm going to take a macro shot and put it in this part of the video for you so you can see how far my ridges are apart. Right, so we got our decore done now. It's always important to remember which side is which. So I got on the floor, I've got the start of my alien where I started in the chuck here when I was clapting in, and in my hand I've got the end of my clapton. So that's going to be the start now of my alien. It's always important to remember it, because if you don't and you pick the wrong side up and you start alien in the other way to the clapton, it's not going to go right. It's just going to mohawk all the way down. So the easiest way to remember is when I told you just now, leave excess on the end of your 35 gauge. I've still got my excess on the end of it, and then I've got my decore. So now we'll move on to setting up your triple core 26 gauge. Now, when I said I've still got it, I've still got my 26 gauge core attached to my fishing swivel. And now what you're going to need is obviously 2 extra bits of 26 gauge. So pull about, well, I would say about just under a foot, well, half a foot of 26 gauge off. And obviously you need 2 bits of it. Now, when you've got your 2 bits of 26 gauge cut, it's important these are as straight as possible, and you need them so they're level as well, so equal sized. So what I'll do is I'll cut off down here. There we go. 2 sections of 26 gauge. Now, what you need is you do need a bit of 35 gauge. I call this method binding. So you're going to be binding the part that goes in your drill chuck. What you're going to need is, earlier when I said you need to keep your 26 gauge attached to your swivel, that is going to be the middle of your triple core. So this wire is going to be the middle, and you're going to have 26 gauge on top, 26 gauge below. So I'll grab one section, put it below. I'll grab another section and put it on top. Now, do not attach the 2 loose parts to your swivel. Grab your 35 gauge that we cut off, put it underneath your finger and wrap it around your 3 cores. You need to try and keep your 3 cores as parallel and as flat as you can. If you need to, grab your toothless pliers and give them a squeeze down, and then it'll keep them flat. Now, I always put more bind on it. It's always better to have more than less. And job's a good one. So, your 3 core now will look like that. You're going to be cutting off the excess here, and what I'll do is I'll get a macro shot of that now, okay? So now you've seen what my cores look like when they've been binded together. You need to make sure they're nice and flat, and you need to make sure the 2 loose cores are on the top and the bottom, and the core that's attached to your swivel is your middle core. So if you think of it as 1, 2, 3, 1 is loose, 2 is attached to your swivel, 3 is loose. Now you need to get this part in your drill now. Make sure when putting in your drill it's dead center. Clamp it down a bit, but not too tight, because otherwise you're going to put the whole thing out. So there we go, 2 loose cores. This core right here is the top, that core right there is the bottom, and obviously that's your middle core, the one that's attached to your swivel. Just make sure it's nice and neat. Wire prep is the best thing you can do for this. A lot of patience. Right, so here we go. I got my D-core. Can't really see it. I've got my cores. Now these were a bit too long. They're just going to flail everywhere. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to clip them down to about halfway. So I got pulled that much off, and now you're going to be left with something that looks like that. Middle core, top, bottom. Like I said, think of it as 1, 2, 3. 1 being the top core, 2 being the core that's attached to your swivel, 3 being the bottom core that's loose, like number 1. So grab your D-core and you want to wrap it around your cores. Now lots of people put their D-core in their drill chuck. I personally don't like to do that, just because you're putting too much wire in with your cores, and that's the best way to get your cores to collapse, in my opinion. So now I've got my D-core attached to my aliens. You're going to have roughly about 10 inches here of alien. Sorry, I do apologise, 6 inches. You have about 6 inches of alien here, so that's plenty. That's what you're looking like in the drill, and there's my D-core. So let's try and get this done. Here we go. Got my D-core, got my loose cores, and we got my main core. When you're starting off, if you don't think your cores are flat, grab your toothless and give them a good pinch. Now don't be alarmed. At the start you may get some mohawking. If you do, don't be put off, but keep it going, adjust tension. So you're holding it, I hold it through my hand, so it goes right the way through my hand, and I hold my thumb there and my deco comes out of there. That way I adjust my tension by the pressure with my thumb. Remember, your drill needs to be in the opposite direction to your deco. Start off at an angle, or rather straight, until you catch it. Slowly does it. Right, so we got that going now. Start off slow, because these decos now, the cores rather, they're loose, so they are going to flail about a lot. So up here, I've got my alien coming straight away. Remember to keep the tension. You're going to be moving your hand along as you go along. Keep a nice speed. When you feel comfortable and you feel like you can go faster, go a bit faster. But please remember, you've got cores jumping about. It's important to mention at this point, I am moving my hand as I'm going along the wire. So I started down here obviously, and my angle is there. So I'm moving down my wire as I'm wrapping. Don't worry about these twists, that happens. Got plenty of deco left as well, so I can make another 6-inch section. So I'll put this out the way over here a minute. So here we go. Got some alien. Spacing isn't great because I've rushed it a little bit. Now I'm going to show you what my alien looks like. So we've got a nice 6-inch section of alien. I could get a dual 6 wrap out of that easy. So with the twists, now people just say, oh, put the drill in the opposite rotation. Don't do that. With aliens, you're just going to loosen your wrap. So what you want to do is you want to find your straightest point, get your toothless pliers and walk your toothless pliers along your alien section. At this point you want to be gentle with your cores because you're going to have a bit of a nightmare otherwise. Then turn it around. Take your time with this, otherwise you're going to damage your alien wrap. Now you are going to encounter some twists on the way that aren't going to move. Be gentle with them, coax them out. You don't need it perfectly straight all the way through, but it will help. So that'll do. I now have pretty much flat section except for that. I haven't actually done that yet. So I get my coil jig and I got my wire. What we're going to do now is make the actual coil. So here we go. So here we have my alien and my coil jig. Start by putting my alien, I might put my thumb on top, wrap it around and bring it across. Now I think I said at the start of this we're going to do a 6 wrap. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Now it's not my most perfect alien because, like I say, I've done a little bit of a rush job here, if I'm honest. And I've got this section left down here, so I'm going to still be able to make a dual coil out of it easily enough. So here it is. As you can see, it's rushed as all heavy, but don't worry about these parts. Got an alien coil made. It's not perfect because it's rushed. Take your time, have some patience, and then it's going to be a lot better for you. So I've got my aliens set up in here. Don't think any of you needed to see me placing them, setting them up, so on and so forth. The aliens that I done, they were rushed. That's why the wrap wasn't great. It does work a lot better than that. Still have that little section left. I've got a dual coil alien in here. I wasn't happy with the results the first time around, so I quickly made another, if I'm honest with you. So I still have the one I made in the tutorial just now. I still have that other section. Made it the exact same way. There's my core still attached to my swivel. Fresh set of aliens in here. Once again, vaping on UK Labs green DNA key lime cheesecake. When I made this fresh set, I used 5 wraps instead of 6. So it's still got 3mm in diameter. Still got 3 cores, 26 gauge, and it's still got a 35 gauge wrap. Now I'm using a parallel box mod, so the ramp up is a little bit slow to start with, but when the coils are hot, they stay hot for a little while. It's a nice warm vape. It's flavourful and the vapour production is pretty good. It's dense, stays a while. With the 5 wraps I put in here, it came out as 0.14. Please, if you don't know Ohm's law or you don't know battery safety, don't try this build unless you're either on a regulated or you're on a parallel box mod with good cells. Cells that I'm using at the moment, they're rewrapped Sony VTC4s, but I also use the LG Browns, I can't remember, HG2. They are 3000 mAh, and I think they're like either 20 or 25 continuous, I can't remember off the top of my head. And the vape's really good. So there we go. Let me know what you think of the tutorial. If there's other things that people want to know that I do, I will do other tutorials if it's wanted. If people are struggling with a coil and thinking maybe either framed or staples next, frame staples, show my binding technique with that. But we're all done. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope it wasn't too long, and I hope you can kind of get to grips with doing some aliens. If you do manage to get a successful attempt up and coiled, please take some photos, tag me in them. Just to recap, with the cores, you have your middle core, which will be attached to your swivel, so that's core 2. Core 1 will be loose, so it goes on the top. Core 3 will also be loose, so it goes on the bottom. So 1, 2, 3. 1 is the top 26 gauge core, that is loose. 2 is the middle 26 gauge core that is attached to the swivel. 3 is the loose core that's on the bottom. So yeah, 1, 2, 3 method. Thanks guys, nice one. Ta-da.